Welcome back to the Better Enough Founded podcast. New week, new episode. Coach McGraw is getting excited about this project. Mikkel is here. Coach McGraw is here.
Hello, Mikkel. How are you this morning?
I'm great. We are in Waco at the Billy, getting ready for another tournament this weekend. We are headed up to Merido, and we leave on Friday. It's currently Monday morning. What are you looking forward to this week, Coach?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting back into competition. You know, when I was on my way to Colonial a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking to myself that regardless of the outcome, I'm just grateful to be playing. I remember saying that to myself. I said it to the team. Well, I feel that same way this week going to Merido. So, you know, it's not lost on me that we're all very fortunate to be playing. And I know our guys are excited. But above and beyond that, it's just a great golf course. It's a championship golf course. It's long, it's tough. It's got all kinds of good things going for it. It's got amazing greens. So I'm looking forward to seeing Merido again. I haven't been there in 2 years. And they do a great job of running tournaments. They basically brought competitive golf back to the forefront when they hosted a couple of tournaments in May and June. So really looking forward to our time at Merido next week.
Yeah, good people up there as well. Spectator update on that. Only direct family of the players and coaches will be allowed. So unfortunately, you're not going to get the opportunity to come out and watch the Baylor Bears, but hopefully we can catch up on all that in the spring, watch some extra golf then. So we're getting ready to go on the road. Another team that's been on the road and been doing great is Baylor Women's Golf, and we got to give them a little shout out, Coach. They won their very first tournament up in Oklahoma by 34 strokes. And Gerline took the individual title there. And then they just went down to University of Texas in Austin and won by 11. Gerline, again, takes the title. Any thoughts on that, Coach?
My thoughts are I need to go have lunch with Jay Goebel because that's an incredible stretch that they're on right now. And shout out to Jay Goebel and Carly Ludwig, just getting a great group of girls really prepared for the season well. And I felt like coming out of COVID, the teams that had done the best job sort of kind of preparing themselves for competition again would probably do pretty well. And man, they've played well. It's just so fun to see them play well. And I've always said this, when the women's team does well, that's great for us. When we do well, that's great for them. We're not two separate teams, if you will. We're both Baylor Golf. So I'm really excited for them. And I think they have 2 more tournaments, and I'd love to see them continue their streak.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch. Gerline tied the program record with a 65. Was that in the second round, I believe, down there?
I think so.
So she's just shooting lights out. They have a couple freshmen playing really well. Really, their entire lineup's playing great. So hopefully some of that juju can continue to wear off on us since I guess Baylor Golf has won 3 tournaments in a row now combined. So that's extra fun. Shout out to them. Another guy still playing well is former guest, last week's guest, Will Zalatoris. A quick update on him. He tied for 5th at the Shriners this week, but it was a 3-way tie. And I think he needed a 2-way tie for a special exemption. Is that correct, Coach?
He did. So it's obvious he played well again this week. But I think if he does well this next week when he's playing the Bermuda Championship, and he got in that tournament based upon his top 10 finish this week, I mean, it's really not unprecedented, but it's really cool when you see a guy who started the year with no status on the PGA Tour, and he may end the year with status, and literally had no status on the Korn Ferry 17 months ago, none. And he's ranked, I think, in the top 70 now in the entire world. So that's a great story. And honestly, he's just such a good guy. He's easy to pull for, and his story is getting very well noticed in the world of golf.
Yeah, he's great, and we're trying to create this good wave of momentum for the podcast. So it was a genius move on our part to have Will Zalatoris on, because he's just going to play a lot of good golf.
Did you just call yourself a genius?
I called you a genius. This is your podcast. So
okay, fair enough.
Anyways, okay. I guess we're talking about a lot of good golf this week in the intro. We have made it all the way to the number 1 round. Again, I think the listeners are on the edge of their seat. They just cannot wait. We've made it through the top 5, and we finally got down to the number 1. Very best round that Coach McGraw has ever witnessed in college golf, and there's been some good ones. And now, in this week, episode 12, we are finally down to it. And I think I know what it's going to be, but I still can't wait to hear the story of the best round you ever watched in college golf.
Well, Mikkel, this round was very, very special. For one, it was from a special player that I had recruited at Oklahoma State, but it was only his second college golf tournament. So the round is the first round at the second round at the 2007 Fighting Illini at Olympia Fields in Chicago. So Ricky Fowler shot a 7-under par 63 and a 30-mile-an-hour wind. So, and sometimes you exaggerate, maybe a little bit. I think as people who know me closely know that I'm allowed 10% embellishment.
Yeah.
So if 10%, do the math, whatever that is, it was somewhere in the high 20s mile per hour wind, if you will, that he shot this 63. It tied Vijay Singh's major championship record at Olympia Fields in 2003. Vijay shot 63 at the U.S. Open the year Jim Furyk won. So it tied that record. His picture is on the wall at Olympia Fields, holding the trophy that week, and he led the team to a victory that week. But I just didn't see a 63 at Olympia Fields. Those of you who watched recently the tournament where Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson and John Rahm and all those greatest players in the world were going around that place in 4 rounds and only shot 4 under. I mean, it's a championship golf course. So for Ricky to have shot a 63 and only his second college golf tournament, it was pretty impressive. It's a round I'll never forget. It's a round his teammates will never forget, and it did lead us to victory that week. I don't have the shot by shot of that round. I just remember thinking to myself when he putted out on 18, I don't know if I'll ever see a better round than this. Now, I'm challenging all you Baylor golfers out there in the future. Feel free to shoot a better round than this one, but it was very, very good.
So he was a freshman. I didn't know that.
He was a freshman. Wow. He had played he was ranked number 1 in amateur golf coming into college.
Yeah.
Only 2 players before him had done that, and that was Tiger Woods and Casey Wittenberg, also an Oklahoma State golfer. And he didn't get to play in our first tournament at Inverness because he was at the Walker Cup, helping the United States team win that. And then he came back and played in the preview and finished like 3rd or 4th, I'm not sure, and then came to Olympia Fields. And just, man, he got it going there. And it was kind of when everybody woke up and realized this kid is going to be something. And to do that at Olympia Fields, one of my favorite golf courses in the world, and certainly a great test, was something fun to watch. And I hope I get to see something like that again in my career.
It's a decent recruit there, getting the number 1 player in the world. Cool. We made it through the top 5. Lots of good stories there. Lots of good golf. Okay, Coach, we're transitioning over to this week's guest. Who is your guest today on this podcast?
Well, my guest this week is a player that, in my mind, stands out in my 35 years of coaching. His name is Zach Robinson. Zach is from Fort Worth, Texas, originally, and was a golf All-American twice at Oklahoma State, so a very, very accomplished player, the Byron Nelson Award winner his senior year. But if his name doesn't ring a bell, that's probably understandable for most people because he did not play professional golf. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the podcast today, Zach will. He didn't play professional golf, so you don't know his story that way. And only the people that competed against him in college and maybe some other coaches that were around at the time would even know who Zach is. But his story is very, very inspiring. I've always felt like he inspired me. He's a great conversationalist. He's incredibly brilliant. He's got an unbelievable sense of humor. He talks in this podcast about the value of an education, but not just the book education you get, but the life education you get when you go to college and play college golf, and how important that was to him. And to mention also the golf education that he got, because he had a lot of growing to do in golf itself. He talks about how he did that. What he is a great example of using every resource around you to make yourself better. He is a great example of somebody who had a dream and a vision of something he could accomplish and how he actually went through the steps to get that goal accomplished. He talks about that. He talks about his former teammates, a couple of them, Hunter Mahan and Alex Noren, who have played world-class golf, and what he learned from those guys. But the final thing he really talks to me about today, and is the most inspiring thing that Zach has ever done for me is his battle with cancer over the last year and how he has won that battle as well. So I'm really, really excited that Zach decided he would join us on the podcast. I think all you listeners will enjoy, and you'll just really love getting to know Zach Robinson.
Yes, absolutely. Great guy with great perspective. Here's Zach Robinson.
Zach Robinson, wow, Fort Worth, Texas, Zach Robinson, the Zach Robinson. How are you doing today, Zach?
I'm doing great. I don't know if anyone has ever heard that name, but it's great to be here with you. You know me, so no, it's really cool to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's, it's funny. I had so many things I want to cover in this podcast, and it may take a little longer than we thought and a lot of that will be based upon how long you want to speak on these subjects. But I've got a lot I want to cover today. I've coached 35 years, and I have to say this honestly, there's obviously some players that stand out. I mean, if you think about players who have been College Player of the Year, maybe that stands out, or whatever, different kind of things like that. But you were never College Player of the Year, but you were a great player. But you stand out for so many reasons that I felt like I owed it to anybody that wants to listen to my podcast to have you on. So I want to thank you for coming on today, because I think this is really going to be eye-opening for a lot of people.
Well, thanks. I'm excited. We have a lot of things that happened over the years, so stories are plenty. So hopefully we can do them justice.
They are. Well, here I'll start by saying I think there's a story in the recruiting scenario of Zach Robinson. So by the time you came into the mix, you had written a letter. It got on Coach Holder's desk, and as was custom in those days, if you weren't a superstar, those letters always got pushed across to my desk. And so here's this kid, Zach Robinson, Fort Worth, Texas. Now, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm not the dullest one either. If it's a kid from Texas, Mike Holder did very well in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
always did.
That's right.
I think he had right at 20 people be All-American of some sort from the state of Texas. So every kid that he had that played in the lineup, with the exception of one, won a national championship from Texas. And every kid who played in the lineup was an All-American, with the exception of one from the state of Texas. So it was a big state. So when I see this resume and it says Zach Robinson, Fort Worth, Southwest High School, all of that, I'm thinking, well, he's pretty good. He's not great, but he's not terrible. He's got good grades. So I'll get to the point real quick here, and that is a few weeks later, he was getting ready to go to the U.S. Junior. And I was supposed to come up with a list of all of the people he should look at the U.S. Junior. And you had responded back to my emails and said, Coach, I qualified for the U.S. Junior. I said, watch Zach Robinson. You know what his response was? Why would I do that?
Very common response, too, I think, throughout my life. So, no, I understand.
Well, it was. So here's what I'm going to do. I gave him your resume and said, Mike, just watch him. You never know. You never know. So you get to the U.S. Junior. How did that week go for you?
Well, that's funny. Golf is a funny sport, as you know. It's like, sometimes when you're not feeling your best or you start to lose that confidence, there's something that just kind of happens. And I remember I hadn't been playing that well in the AJGA majors that summer, and I was a little bit just kind of despondent, and I wasn't sure about the summer, but I still had the junior amateur. And so I went up there, and I remember I didn't really hit any balls for the first 3 or 4 days leading up to when we left, which wasn't like me. I just kind of think that I needed like just to step back for a moment before that week. And when I got up there, I've never hit the ball so well in my life, and I knew it from the first day on the range. Everything was just right. I mean, it was really kind of inspiring for me. And so I got this spark suddenly up there in Oregon, and I had a great week. I made it to the semifinals. Unfortunately, I met Ryan Moore in the semifinals, who some people have heard of, and he dismantled me, I think 6-5, which for 18 holes, for an 18-hole match, it's not going very well. It was close through about 7 or 8 holes, and then the wheels came off, as they say. So, but I had a great week, and I remember seeing Coach Holder there, and I remember kind of hearing that tournament meant a lot to him in how he viewed, recruits. And so I came home, I think, on a bit of a high note that I had played so well in that event, and it meant a lot to me. But then it ultimately meant even more when about probably 2 or 3 weeks later, I was with some friends having dinner, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time. It was 2000. And so that wasn't quite a thing yet, but some friends of mine did. And my mom called a friend of mine and told me that Mike Holder had just called me. So I mean, the rest of that night was kind of a blur. I rushed home in case he called back. I was very excited because for me, as a kid in Fort Worth, which, that's Hogan and Nelson, I mean, giants of the game. And I heard about those guys, as a kid, just growing up playing golf. I also always heard about OSU and the private airplane and the golf courses and the ping clubs, and to me that felt like the ultimate. And so to hear that I had gotten a phone call from the coach of that school, I was excited, to say the least. So I remember I rushed home. He didn't call back that night. I just held the phone. It was very, very sad. Just like a lot of the times that I tried to get a date, I just kind of sat by the phone waiting. And as usual, nothing happened. But then the next day, he called me back, and I remember that phone call because I was really nervous because he was this kind of imposing figure, in the game, and I didn't want to say the wrong thing and turn him off. But I remember having a really good conversation with him, and when I hung up, I was, for me, as that kid in Fort Worth, who was always a good player, but was never the best in the country, but wanted to be, that was a big moment for me because I felt like I had a chance to, maybe do something really neat in the game of golf that I had kind of always heard about, but wasn't always sure if I was going to be good enough.
Well, so sort of validation that this iconic coach gives you a call, that's a good feeling for a young man, I'm sure.
It is, and there were other phone calls that he made that weren't as validating to me over the years. That one happened to be a very validating phone call for me as a kid trying to find a place where he could go play college golf, because that was always my goal in high school, as it is for a lot of kids coming out. They want to go play college golf, and I didn't know where that was going to be or how it was going to happen. But for me, OSU was kind of the ultimate. So I felt extremely fortunate that was possibly happening.
Well, he talked to me that afternoon on the phone, and you had done a good job on the phone call because he was impressed. And he said, he's a pretty good player, and there were a lot of coaches following. So he had already come up in his mind with a scenario that maybe give him a little bit of scholarship, but he's going to get a ton of academic, and he's a really good kid and all these things. It was like, we should do this. And so that's when I got back in touch with you and said, hey, Coach Holder would like to have an official visit. Can you come for official visit? We set up the days. And for the life of me, I do not know why we didn't have you drive. We had you fly from DFW.
I was just trying to milk it, like, let's have him make a plane reservation for me. Let's really enjoy this experience.
Well, anyway, so I had to drive down to Oklahoma City because you weren't a big enough name for him to go pick you up.
No.
And so I want you to tell the story. Two things. One, the drive back to Stillwater from Oklahoma City. And two, the dinner we had that night at El Tapatio. So those are two things that are etched indelibly upon my memory.
Sure. So there's a drive of about an hour to, OKC up to Stillwater. And there's a very clear, well-marked exit off of I-35. 174 is the exit with multiple signage that this is how you get to Oklahoma State University if you're trying to get there, which I thought you were. So we get in the car and we're driving up, and Oklahoma State's the best at this and we're the best at that, and this, and I'm just eating it up and then we're talking, and then here comes exit 174, and whoosh, and you go, oh my gosh, I've never missed the exit. I just missed the exit. And unfortunately that, that part of Oklahoma, it's like 19 miles to the next, exit where you turn around. So I'm like, hey, no big deal. We're talking. That was a nice conversation. He just happened to miss the exit. So we're talking some more, Charles Howe is this great. And, Anders Holtman, you're talking about Anders Holtman. I remember that conversation. And I was really excited to kind of get to campus and see it all. So you turn around, you're coming back, and you come to exit 174, and you miss it again. So at this point, I'm thinking, do I just need to tell him to keep going south? Just take me home. I don't know if this is going to work, or if I was thinking, okay, if this is the kind of talent that's going to be in charge of me, I could be running this place in a couple of months. So, so you went back down, and that's only 4 miles, I think. So you came back around, and you finally got me to campus, which was really nice to finally see. It was dark by then, I think. I landed at about noon.
Yeah, I got you.
So we finally get there, and that night we went to El Tapatio, which was a staple. That was, a place in Stillwater where you had to go. Really great Mexican food. And on the way up, I remember you had said something about you were a fast eater, and I kind of said, I am too. And I think we both kind of filed that away, like, no, okay, well, I actually am. So we get to El Tapatio, and we were going to have a little bit of a speed eating your contest, and I was pretty excited because I was ready to just show you how fast of an eater I was, and you were real quiet about everything, kind of coy. And I remember you ordered the enchiladas first, and I distinctly remember I ordered this. I even said, I want the same thing because I didn't want there to be any controversy after I beat you that I had some less amount of food. So I made sure that it was an equal, fair fight. So the food comes, and I'm a couple of bites in, and I hear this fork drop onto the plate, and I think, did he drop? Is he so nervous about this? He dropped his fork. He's fumbling around over there, which is with the rice and beans. And I look over down the table, and you're just sitting there with your arms folded and this little smug little look on your face, and your plate is completely empty. I've got 2/3 of my plate left at least, and I was getting after it. I mean, I was a fast eater. And I remember you looking at me, and you had this look on your face like, welcome to the big leagues of eating, young man. Now, we're going to get to that later on because that was a foreshadow right there. But it was a very humbling moment for me on my visit that I kind of felt like, okay, this really is the big leagues of college golf. This guy just dismantled me.
Well, if that's a great story, and you told it well, and you told it very accurately. But, I had been at that point for about 40 years, the fastest eater in the world, period. And it's hard to be that great at something for that long, but I was. And you got to see it, Tiger 2.0, Tiger at Pebble Beach. That's what you saw that evening at El Tapatio. So you're welcome.
I always thought about it because you grew up with all these siblings, and there wasn't enough food on the table. We've all heard the story about reaching and fighting for the last piece of bread. We all get it. I didn't have that upbringing, so I don't know if I'm just like a psychopath or like I just eat really, really fast. You have a reason. You were kind of trained for it. I just eat very fast for some reason.
All right. Well, we both got to the same place in different ways. But the truth is, so you come on that visit, we treat you great. Mike Holder's already decided he would love to have you on the team. It's all going to work out fine. But you were still talking to another coach, Bill Monaghan at TCU. And I really think it's important that you tell kind of what you and Coach Monaghan talked about.
Yeah, so I was talking with Coach Monaghan. I'd also been on a visit to Vanderbilt, and the academics of that university really kind of appealed to me as well because I did enjoy school, and I did well in school, and so I liked that appealed to me. But I'd always, as a kid, I grew up with the teams that Coach Monaghan had, and he always had really good teams. I mean, they had a very good span of years there where they had some great, great players. And so I saw that. And so I remember he called me, and I have to give him a lot of credit because this was an influential phone call in my life. It was a short phone call, but it meant a lot to me because I had a lot of respect for him and his program and just, the school in general. And he called me and he said, hey, listen, if you want to come here, that's great. I would love to have you on the team. He said, but if you have a chance to go to OSU, I just want to tell you something. He said, if I were you and I had that opportunity, I would take it. I would go to OSU. And I remember I didn't know what to say to him because I was used to coaches calling and kind of giving me here's why we are this and that. And here was a coach who had the foresight or just the honesty just to call me and say, hey, listen, if you have a chance to go here, you should do that. And I remember after I hung up with him, I didn't have it was an easy thing for me to know that that's where I was going to go because, I think in the world, you hear a lot of, of opinions and a lot of feedback. And most of the time there's some angle there. Most of the time there's some kind of slant or something in it for the person who's giving you the advice. And when I hung up the phone, I knew that was the most honest thing he could say to me. And how could I not really take that and absorb that and run with what he had said, because he had seen a lot more than me in terms of, college programs. And so when I hung up the phone with him, I knew right then I was going to go to OSU. And I think it was shortly after that, I called you guys and said, if you still want me, I'd love to come. I always thought that there was like an error, in the recruiting, why did you mean to call me? But every time I called, I was like, assuming they answer the phone, which I think they will, I'm going to tell them that, I'm coming. And I was pretty excited to come. That was a huge deal for me as a kid who wanted to play college golf and had heard all the stories for years and years and years, about all the teams and the programs. It was a big deal for me.
Well, yeah, that recruiting scenario was probably the most interesting one that I've had in my years. Maybe rivals what I did with Ricky Fowler. It was just a little different look, and he was one of the best players in the country. But both of those stories stand out. I appreciate you kind of going over that. So you get to Oklahoma State a year later, and you couldn't have two coaches sort of be any different than Mike Holder and I were. We were very different personalities. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I want to get eventually to some of your teammates you had while you were at Oklahoma State, because those are some interesting stories. But so your freshman year, I've got kind of two indelible memories there. One of them is divots on our beautiful practice tee just a couple of weeks in.
I wonder if they've healed yet. I wonder if they've healed yet.
No, they're not filled yet. We still haven't been able to, they haven't been able to raise enough money to get enough sod to come in and take care of it. So what happened? I'll just tell the story real quick. So Zach got out there and he was so excited to have a place he could practice and nobody bothering him. And he was having this weak grip, kind of a steep angle of attack. And he was digging. You could bury a small child in some of these holes. These were so, so deep. They were just amazing. And Zach just didn't really think he needed to fill the divots. So he didn't put any sand in those divots. And Mike Holder comes on the range tee one day and says, "What is this?" And I said, I thought maybe a comet had hit the earth, an asteroid or something to create this hole. But I said, "Oh, I don't know. It's one of the players. I don't really know who." And I knew it was you. But I also knew I didn't want to be the reason that you signed your I signed your death certificate. So I said, "I'm not really sure." And so after a little investigation, we found out it was you. Now you tell me what Coach Holder did for you. This was genius, by the way.
Well, he made me hit off the downslope from one tee box to the other, where it was, about 5-inch high Bermuda. And he just said, "You can hit here for a while until you learn how to shallow things out a little bit." So everyone's honing their games, for qualifying. I'm, at this ridiculous angle trying to hit 6 irons off a downslope. And it quickly taught me, number one, to value all the things that we had there, because I think I showed up, 18 years old, excited, entitled, and I was just going to run amok. But it also, I think, reminded me that I needed to continue to work to get better, because I did have a grip that was a little bit unorthodox with a weak left hand, and I was a little bit inside out, over the top. I made it work for me, and I was able to succeed in junior golf, but I knew at that level very quickly I was going to have to get a lot better fast to compete with Hunter Mahan and all the other, all Americans who I had to play against every day. And so he used a very good tactic to kind of get me to see things from that perspective. It took me a while to understand what he was trying to do, as it did a lot that first year. But he made me see that, I didn't build that golf course. And so he wasn't going to let me show up and destroy it in a couple of weeks. And I think that helped me to see all the things we had at OSU and the way that you were supposed to treat things.
Well, and I thought it was a good lesson for you to learn early on. I never saw you hit golf balls without filling your divots the rest of your career. It did work. You did shallow it out. And I have this story that spring, not that spring, literally 18 months later. So you redshirted that first year, but 18 months later, we're playing at Kansas State for the regional, and it's misting rain early in the morning. So you can see your footprints, as you go across the practice tee, and you warmed up and you were the first guy to go off. And I walked clear down to where Mike Holder was standing. I said, come here, Mike, come here and look at this. And I point to the ground right where you had been hitting balls. You didn't take one divot through your entire bag. And he goes, what am I looking at? And I said, that's where Zach just hit golf balls to warm up for this round. And he goes, he's going to play good today.
I shot 68 that day.
Rainstorm, huh? What?
Yeah, I shot 68 in the rain that day.
In a rainstorm. You were one of the big reasons we took a lead that day in the regional. But it was like that was full circle. I mean, it came full 180 degrees from where you were that first week. So
that first year, though, was so important for me, just not just as a golfer at OSU, but as a human being. I mean, I think you have to learn certain things in your life, and I learned so many things that first year. Some, unfortunately, I was reminded of in years 2, 3, 4. But I learned a lot that first year that really made me understand what it meant to not just be at OSU or college athlete, but to be a man. And they weren't always easy, but I still think back on a lot of those things, even now, as someone who's much older. And I'm so thankful for that. And I think that's one thing that I think high school golfers, as they enter college golf, I think it's probably pretty common to enter it with these just visions of grandeur. I'm going to arrive on the scene and I'm going to do all these things. And I think for a lot of kids, it's still important to remember that there's so many people who came before you that laid the foundation for what you're about to walk into. That you probably have some growing as a person that you can do, even if you don't think so. And I think I learned that, unfortunately, in some harder ways that first year, but I wasn't ever going to leave. I wasn't ever going to quit. As much as, I wanted to say something bad about you guys to your face, I was never going to do it. I just internalized it, and I used that to drive me to continue to try to get better, because I knew that I had to, if I was going to get on the private airplane or eat the good food, whatever it is, just be on that team who's going somewhere to play and compete. I was going to have to work really hard. And so I did.
We go through that, your learning lessons, we go through that first year. And in the spring, we had an issue with a player who ended up leaving the team, and you had won a qualifying for our tournament in Las Vegas. And I remember that's probably the most disappointed I saw you in college, when we basically told you weren't going to go. You were going to redshirt. You remember that moment? I'm sure.
Yeah. So I qualified for the Vegas tournament, which I've been hearing for weeks was so much fun and all these great things we were going to do. And so I played really well. And a lot of the things I've been working on in my swing, were starting to kind of show themselves and pay off. And, as a golfer, it takes weeks and months to kind of see those little bitty things start to show up in your scores. And they had. So I played well and I qualified, and I walked into the team meeting, and I was, my chest was high. It was going to be, who's going up to Vegas? And you not only didn't pick me, but in front of the whole table, you said, you're going to redshirt this year. And I just knew everyone was kind of looking at me. How's he going to, because nobody wants to hear that. I didn't expect to come in and do that. You guys probably did. I didn't. And so for me, that was a realization kind of late February that, okay, you're not playing the rest of the spring, even though you felt like you earned a spot this time. And I had, but I hadn't earned a spot to use that entire year as one of my years. And looking back, as you know, what a great thing that was that you guys did for me to not have that one. Because what if I would have just played one tournament, finished 57th, and never, played again? That's a year that I now. So keeping that year for myself to continue to work and get better was a tough lesson. I didn't expect it that day. But what a great thing you guys did for me.
Well, and I think that's probably when I learned that lesson from Mike Holder was, if a kid hadn't made the team until deep into the second semester, he's probably not yet belongs on your team. Probably not always, but your response could have been really bitter. It could have been really, I'm going to transfer. These guys aren't treating me fair. I should have been going. But we knew for your development, you needed some time. And you did the most mature thing I've seen a student athlete do in all of my years. In those days, student athletes were not allowed to use the team practice facilities in the summer. So you couldn't use them. You had to wait and come back in August when the new school year started. You took it upon yourself to get a job with a maintenance crew at Karsten Creek so you could work at the golf course, take some classes, and practice. And you did it for a lot of reasons, but I know one of them was so Mike Holder and Mike McGraw could see you practicing and working at your game.
Well, I knew that I had a golf course that was probably the best, hardest course that I could be at, with a facility where I could practice it, every day. That I knew it was going to help me get better, and I'd seen that all that first year, so I knew that I wanted to be in Stillwater. Unfortunately, there was a rule at the time that said you couldn't use the facility unless you worked out there, and I didn't grow up rich at all. I had some parents who were amazing and worked very hard so that I could work to see how good I could be at golf. But we weren't rich at all. So that was a different experience for me to, sign up and show up at 6:30 every morning, or 6. I forgot. It was early. And I mowed greens from, 7 to 9:30. And then you had a second job, which the superintendent didn't trust in me with any of the hard jobs, which were the fun jobs. So I usually got the crummy job, which I probably should have gotten. So from 9:30 until noon or whatever, I was walking around filling in divots in the fairway, raking bunkers. I mean, it wasn't a fun experience, but I knew after that I could go practice. And so what a cool experience that turned out to be for me, in that I got to learn how to mow greens, which honestly, learning a little bit more, and I'm sure that you can know what I mean here, but when you see kind of what goes into maintaining a course or the greens, you not only have a more of a respect for it, but you also, I think, you begin to kind of understand the course too, just that much more. And so I felt like I was becoming a little bit more just one with Karsten Creek, if you will. And what a neat experience to meet those guys who made that golf course so good for us every day, work alongside them, but also have a chance to practice, in the summers. And so I played a few events. Like I know I played in the Southern Amateur that year at East Lake. I played in a few other things, but I wanted to get better because I had just, it's been a year seeing Hunter Mahan just beat almost everybody, in the game, and he continued to that next year. So I had a front row seat for one of the best college players of that era, and I knew how much better I needed to get, and that really drove me to see those guys and see how good they were, which was another reason why I would never have left, OSU ever, because I was around the best players every day. And what a cool thing for someone who's trying to get better to be around the best players every day. That's a really important thing, to see how they practice, see how they think around the golf course. And so I knew that I wanted to get better, and that was a really important way for me to do that summer. And it was a little bit of a unique experience for me, but I think it was a good one.
I think you won the qualifying for the preview at the end of, beginning of that semester. So Mike Holder was going, wow, this kid really did make a lot of progress. And then we played the preview at Karsten Creek because we were going to host the national championship that spring. And this is single-handedly one of the funniest things that happened in my 16 years at Oklahoma State. And yet the story has never been told until now.
My contract for this thing said this wouldn't be discussed. So I don't know if I need to
We're discussing this one.
Call some attorneys after this is over. But go ahead. No, go ahead. This is fine.
So we played all 5 players in the same group format. So we had 15 teams, and your coaches and the players, all 5 were together. And so we've played the front 9. We go to 10, and the first guy that putts out, Mike Holder would always just point to the next tee, and that guy would just go to the next tee and hit. And so he had asked me to go up to the green on 11, the par 3. He said, go up to the green. I want to see how those balls are, releasing, or what they're doing, or whatever. So I was up at the green, and I see you're the first one that comes across to hit your tee shot. And so you're lined up over this 5-iron, number 11. Now, Zach, take it away. What happened after that?
I hit it to 5 feet and made birdie. Next story.
That's not the truth, Zach.
I hit what some people might call, and this is up for debate, I hit what some people might call a shank into a nice little area of trees directly off the tee box. And to my credit, I hadn't hit a shank in probably, I hit one when I was 12 in a tournament because I was playing with these new clubs that were way too long, and I was trying to, and so that was a shank. I hadn't hit one since then. That's a lot of years of golf. I got up there on 11, and I felt good over the shot, and I literally hit a cold shank into the trees. And as you like to tell it, there was just this blur of a human to his golf bag and back to put another ball in the ground as fast as possible and hit hit one on the green. And that's exactly what I did. I couldn't get a ball. I actually think I looked back just for a second to see, did anybody back on 10 green see what just happened? Or could I just play this off? Now, I was always going to count it, but did anybody see it? That's the main.
So I see you go back to your golf bag. I saw the shank. I saw what happened. So I know you lay 3 on the green. So after the round, we're in the scoring tent. And Mike Holder's looking at your scorecard. And he says, Zach, you've got a 5 here on 11.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, sir, I made a double bogey. And he looked at it and he scratched his head and he said, I never saw that. Okay, whatever. But you were honest.
Hey,
but wow.
Mike's got some honesty points there with the shank on 11. Yeah, and there was nobody around. I mean, if there had been like a home crowd, everyone, was around the tee box, I could see some nerves getting in there maybe, but no, it was just, and this happens to everybody. But it was one of my less enjoyable moments of college golf. Thank you for bringing it up for all of your, I would just assume millions of podcast listeners to hear the story of the shank.
Well, it's okay. What was impressive was how you played it off and got that other ball in play so quickly. So that spring of that year that you redshirted the year before, but you're playing a regular member of the lineup, playing beautifully. We're going to host the national championship. And we are going to that Vegas tournament you so desperately wanted to play in the year before. And here we are at Caesar's Palace in an amazing restaurant called The Palm. And so we've already had a foreshadowing to this moment.
Yeah.
I need you to tell the world about my first speed eating loss, period, in history.
Well, so dear world, comma. I was on a mission that whole spring season, I think, with kind of you as my target. That whole first year, it was attaboys and we'll get theirs and this seething, hatred. And no, I'm just kidding. We got to the Palm. It was a beautiful restaurant, Caesar's Palace. It was such a cool experience. And I decided that I wanted to take another run at you. And so the Palm offered what I believe was a 36 ounce. No, that's not right. Is that right?
33 ounces.
33 ounces. Thank you. And so we kind of decided to have another contest. And I remember a few things about that night. First, I remember I asked the waiter if I could go back and see this football of meat that I was going to go eat. So he said, sure, come on back. So I remember going back into the kitchen of the Palm, this, 20-year-old kid, idiot kid, and they open this giant oven and they stab, this huge like blob of meat and they pull it out for me to see, like, I'm going to approve it or something. Like I get to say, yeah, that'll do, right? Like, who am I? So I say, yeah, looks good. Looks like a big giant steak. So they shove it back in there. I go back out and I'm trying to get my mind, just in the right zone. So the food comes and I'm sitting next to Hunter, and Hunter was shooting, 65 every day. So he's got this lobster, and he's just, slowly enjoying his lobster. He's enjoying being the best college player that there is, but he's coaching me up at the same time saying, okay, it's going to be one slab at a time, because they had cut this giant football of meat into these slabs. So I look down at you, you look down at me, forks up, the gesture, right? And then we get after it. And so I'm just in an eating zone. And I think those happen to people from time to time. And I found my rhythm that night at the Palm, and slab by slab, I just took this massive steak down. And I remember when I got done with the last bite, I hadn't heard that torturous fork hit the plate on your end of the table, which had haunted me since, El Tapatio. So I remember holding my fork over the plate, gently released it so that it could make the signature cling, which it did, to which I turned my head down. And I remember you had about 2 or 3 bites left. It was close. I mean, the historians will probably say it was one of the closest eating contests ever, when the historians inevitably audit that night at the Caesars. And you had this look on your face like, no, this can't be true. This can't be happening. Not this guy, not this lowly recruit from Fort Worth who dug a grave on the driving range last year. Sure enough, I had done it. And not only that, but just to make sure that you knew what had happened, I remember I walked down to your seat. I don't even remember that, but I walked down and I kind of looked over your shoulder and I said, you still have a little bit left, don't you? And then I walked back and I was so proud. The only thing that made me a little bit less excited was the fact that we then ate the brownie sundae, just because, and I've never felt as bad as I felt after that. everything stayed inside my body, which is nice. But that was probably the crowning achievement of my life to that point. Now I've gotten married. I love you, Katie. I've had had two sons who I love dearly, and we won a national championship in '06. But that is right up there with those other moments in my life. But that's a compliment to you because you are, as we all know, and if you don't know, I mean, this is a fact, you are the fastest eater in the history of the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you retelling that story. The one detail that was kind of fuzzy, I'm sure it's accurate, but I didn't realize Hunter Mahan was coaching you. So you've got the best player in college golf coaching you up and inspiring you. That's hardly fair.
I mean, I think you've heard that detail maybe for 17 years now, every time we tell it. And so It's nice that you use the podcast, your world. I know I'm in your world now. Everyone's on your side here. You're going to try to get the crowd against me. That's a very noble effort, but I think everybody knows that's just a cheap tactic.
All right. Well, anyway, it was my first loss, and I've been seething over it for 17 years. But anyway, so we ended up hosting the national championship at Karsten Creek that year. You became an honorable mention All-American, which honestly, if you go back to that day when you were digging divots at the range, it's kind of hard to imagine that just 18 months later, 19 months later, you'd be an All-American, but you were, which was great. I don't know how to, there's a lot packed into your career at Oklahoma State. There's a ton in there. And I want to get to all of it, but before we go too much further, let's talk about your teammates that you had, one being Hunter Mahan and how he inspired you. I know he was very good to you. And Alex Noren, who's still playing, he's actually now playing the PGA Tour.
Yeah, so Hunter and I were on the team for 2 years before he turned pro. I lived with Alex for 4 years, so a lot of insight there. That would need a separate, I think, episode of the podcast for just Alex Noren's stories, but we'll get there. Hunter, what I always thought was so important about Hunter was a really great player, obviously, but he was a great teammate too. He was always talking with you about what you were trying to do. Hey, have you thought about this or that? And I always thought he led by example, which is a really important quality in any, one of your star players, or, in your case, as a coach, to lead by example. And I remember multiple times, on the range, just, he and I would just be talking, about what we were working on. And for me, that helped me to hear how he saw things. And it helped me to learn, I think, how to get better faster. And that's why having those teammates that were better than me helped me to raise my game faster. And I'm very thankful for that. He was a great player, obviously, then and now, but having him on the team, someone that I looked up to as, a first team he was the college player of the year in
03.
Okay, that's right. So having the college player of the year on your team that you see every day was really kind of cool, honestly, and it helped me. Alex, I felt like Alex was more like me in that we were both working really hard to get better and become the player that we wanted to become. I kind of felt like Hunter was already at that level, and for Alex, he was so talented. And being from Sweden to come to the U.S., I think he immediately wanted to be successful and achieve. And it was really fun for he and I to live together for 4 years. And even though, each of us kind of were on slightly different arcs, if you look back at our careers in terms of the, All-American and the teams that he and I made, kind of some of our accomplishments, I think they were more similar than not. And I think that we each had kind of spells where we struggled with ourselves, internally, trying to figure out how we were going to get the most out of our game. And so to live with Alex and to play with Alex and compete against him was one of the great joys of my life as I look back on it now, because we were both trying to get to the same place. And even though it was competitive, I always felt like, with Alex and I, we were trying to drive each other on and help each other. And when when it came time to play, it was very competitive, as it should have been. So that was a really fun experience for me to get to see those guys and how they approach the game, because obviously there were a lot of great players on the teams that I played on, Alex was probably, and arguably is still, one of the hardest workers, who would never leave the golf course, and he couldn't get there fast enough each day. And that always resonated with me because I wanted to be that kind of a player as well. And then with Hunter, seeing him achieve that level of success week after week after week is what we were trying to get to as players. Those are really, I think, important relationships. And we got to play together on the team in 2003 that hosted, which was a lot of fun because it was a diverse group of talent. And I don't think that you always see that. I think that you see it more now in college as more international players come over and play. For me, that was a new experience to be around so many foreign players and see how they approach the game, how they practiced, how they did the weight room. And so that helped me to kind of look at myself and figure out what I could do better in order to become the player that I was trying to become.
I think that's an underrated skill, if you will, to being a college athlete, is to look around. I've got to get better. And so a skill is learning from the players because they're a resource for you. And if you didn't have Hunter or Alex, you probably never would have developed into the player you became, because if you had a bunch of guys that weren't as good as you, probably wouldn't have worked for you. So I think that was really, really good. And I look back at Hunter and Alex, probably two of the hardest working guys I'd ever seen or coached. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And on your point, I think if I would have gone somewhere else where I was more of like a one man or a two man, I don't know if I would have felt this desire to change my grip, to make it more, standard, or to shallow things out. I think I might have just continued to play how I played. And that's not to say I wouldn't have had just as much or more success. I would say probably not, honestly, because as you get to that higher level, there is a kind of a standard of skill that you have to have. So because I ended up at OSU, for me, that allowed me to see that there was a standard of excellence, not just at OSU, but at the highest levels of college golf, that I wasn't ready for, that I had to get better to get there. And I think if I had been somewhere else where it wasn't obvious in my face every day, I don't know that I would have done that.
Well, and a lot of kids get to college and they think I'm supposed to play right away. And some of those kids do, and they play amazing, and it's great. But so many of them, it's about the development. And that's what you did. You developed your game. So I need kids out there listening to this podcast to understand it's not about being in the lineup at a tournament, freshman year, first tournament. It's about how I develop over time. And I remember how upset you were when we didn't let you play your freshman year, but you handle it beautifully. So a couple other things. We get through, Mike Holder retires after the 2005 season. And quite frankly, I don't think there'll be another career record like Mike Holder had. 18 times he was first or second in 32 years of coaching at the national championship. It's crazy. But he retired and he named me as the head coach that summer. And now I became your head coach. I used to be your assistant coach, had breakfast with you every Saturday morning, at Karsten Creek. I wasn't your buddy, but I certainly could soften some of the hard edges that existed around there and help you out a little bit. But now I became the head coach. What was that like for you?
The sum of all fears, right? It's like, oh my gosh. No, it was, I was excited because, with Coach Bratton as well, I felt like you guys were two guys who were going to help us get better and get the most out of, the team that we had that year, which was different than, 05. So I was excited. I played played the best that I had at OSU that spring of 05, even though we didn't win and we should have. I think, hats off to Georgia because they played great, but Caves Valley. So I don't want to take anything away from their performance, but we had a great team that year and I thought we should have contended. So we came into 06 and I just felt like we had a really good team again. And I was really, I felt guilty that I was on the team in 05 that didn't send off Coach Holder with a title, because I think, number one, I think he deserved it. And number two, we had the team for it. And we didn't know that was his last event. In 05, we just kind of felt like we played bad and, we let everybody down, which wasn't always a good feeling, of course. But then to learn that it was his last team, I don't know. I felt like there was something unfinished there. And I still do, honestly. I thought that we should have won in 05 and 03, or that we could have won in 05 and 03. And so I felt like there was just something that I didn't get to kind of see with him. So I felt bad about it, and I still do when I think about it. I know he had a lot of success, and he probably thinks about it less than I do, but those were my 5 years, and he had a lot more years with a lot more success. But in my 5-year span, I think about a lot of those things. And so going into the next season, our team was still really good, and I felt like we learned something that week at Caves Valley in 05. And so I was excited for the year. I thought that we had a good team and had a good chance to compete again if we, just played well. And so, you coming in as the head coach, I saw that as kind of a smooth transition from the previous years, because you knew so much about the program and so much about each of us, having been around all of us for years.
Well, that was a big advantage for me, not jumping into a brand new program. It was a program I was very close to and knew, even though I'd been the women's coach the year before. So we go through that season, you're playing fine, you're a regular member of the lineup, and then you kind of went into a little bit of a lull in the spring. And I'm trying to get to an eventual point here. And you were out of the lineup for just a bit. And I think you will remember when we took you to a tournament at College Station. You weren't a full member of the lineup at that time. You'd kind of worked your way out, and you shot what Herb Page calls the best round of golf he ever saw in college golf. Herb was the coach at Kent State, coached the major champion, coached a lot of great teams. Your final round, 68, he said, was the finest ball striking round he'd ever witnessed. So,
well, that's kind of him to say. I want to get him on just to hear more about that round. Can you call him in real quick? I would say that I was at a tough time that spring. I was working on an MBA. I had finished my undergrad the spring before, and so you either had to do another second undergraduate degree or you had to work on a master's. And so I went into the MBA program at OSU, and I was trying to play golf, and it was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be from a time management perspective. And I'd always done very well in school, and I liked that, and so I wanted to keep doing that. And I think I had a lot of pressure on myself after being a third-team All-American the previous year, having played well that spring. I was expecting more out of myself, I think, in a lot of areas, and it began to kind of compound. And in golf, and you kind of you start to press a little bit on yourself, and those expectations get higher and higher, and you start to try and force things more and more. It's not a good setup for success. So when you guys gave me that chance kind of later in the spring, I felt like that's where I thought I was going to be at the beginning of the year. I still knew that we had a really good team, and I was excited because for me it felt like, okay, you put in a lot of effort over the years, regardless of what's happened the last month or two or whatever. This is your chance to play well here at the end of the season and help your team succeed. And so that final round in College Station, I think something just changed in my mind where I was a little bit tired of being frustrated about things that had happened, the past, which of course I couldn't change, and all the what ifs, which happens so many times on a golf course. You're always thinking about that 6-footer that you didn't make on the last hole, and it just ruins the rest of your mind is not in the present. I think I was able to get my mind more in the present that final round, and I think that something I found that day that I held on to for the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, you played really well. In fact, that's probably the best golf you played in college. You finished second at the Maxwell with, I think, a final round 64. You finished second at the regional in Cleveland with the middle round 66 in that driving rainstorm. That had to be your best college round, I would think.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you shot even par twice at Nationals, I believe the first round and the final round. I'll never forget this. You were walking with Alan Bratton from the practice tee to the first tee of the final round.
Yeah.
Alan said something to you, and it evoked some emotion right there, I think. What did he say?
We're walking to the first tee, and he said, well, I just talked to Coach Holder, and he wanted me to tell you that even though he's not here physically, he's going to be out there with you in spirit. And for a kid, 23 that always, dreamed of going to OSU and then got to, and then, had some success, but not, the greatest, but was on the cusp of, I think, winning a national championship as a team, which for me at that level would have been really like a dream come true because of all the, the toiling on the range for years and years and years. And he was such a big part of that for so many years, both in, the good times and the bad times. But of course, the bad times were the bad times that I made up in my mind. He was always trying to help me get better, but just the struggles that I had, along the way, and all the successes too. There was a lot in that statement because for me, I felt like I was going to feel him out there and I needed him out there because of all the days in the rain where I was on the range and he would come out and he would watch me, hit balls, even though we were both miserable. And you did this too for all of us. And so to hear that from him was very inspiring for me because I felt like I kind of, I wanted him out there, and that was going to be, a bit of a secret weapon for me, kind of drawing on I think the spirit of what he said, which was, think about all those years that you worked so hard to get here, you and your teammates, just go out now and just play golf. And so that's what we did. And that was a really cool thing for me to hear walking to the first tee. Now, as you know, I'll get ahead of your next story. As you know, I hit arguably the worst snap hook off the first tee in the history of any golf.
With the modern day equipment, it's impossible to hit the shot you hit.
Yeah, you can't do that now. That was only back then. Yeah, right.
You can't do that anymore.
But I hit a terrible snap hook. I had to get my mind right again. Just get focused. But I made par despite the hook, and I was off off.
Well,
off
and
the round.
That day after we won the championship, and we had the Jack Nicklaus Player of the Year, we had the Fred Haskins Award winner, we had the Jonathan Moore won the Arnold Palmer Award for winning the NCAA champ. We were just sweeping all the awards. And you stood there with what I consider to be the most prestigious award in all of college golf, and that's the Byron Nelson Award. And I'm going to tell you why that's special, and you don't get to talk here. One is it's about excellence in the classroom and on the golf course. So there's a lot of people who are really good in the classroom who might not really be all that great on the golf course. But you were not only a player who never made a B in college, but you were a two-time All-American. And now you're helping a team hoist a national championship trophy, which was your dream. And you have literally been the most dedicated, disciplined student athlete I'd ever witnessed. That's why you stand out. And so that's why I still consider the Byron Nelson Award the greatest award in all of college golf. And when you won that, I've never thought about that award the same way, because I watched the sacrifice that took place every day for 5 years. So I just want you to know that I've never told it that way to you. That was an extremely impressive thing.
Well, that's kind to say, and I appreciate that. That for me was always about everybody else, and I say that because, and I mean this, I had so many people along the way in my life who helped me to do anything, from my parents to my teachers in school to you guys as coaches. I mean, so many people have done so many things for me, and all the blessings that I've gotten in my life. I wouldn't be anywhere without any of that or any of those people. So for me to win something like that was a really cool feeling, but it reminded me how lucky I've been and still am, along the way. I mean, that was an award that I thought was really neat because of the academic aspect to it. And I know that there are other awards in college golf that are, I was going to use the air quotes and say the real awards, because it's just, who's the best golfer. And I might kind of think that too deep down, just so you know. But it was a cool thing for me to win because I tried hard in school. I tried hard in the gym. I wanted to get better as a golfer. It was a unique experience, with the interview process and kind of how they, I was up against some great, some outstanding people and, golfers. I didn't think I was going to win. But I felt like it was validated some of the choices I made along the way. But more than anything, it made me so grateful for all the people that helped me, like you and Coach Holder and Coach Bratton and all my teammates, because seeing you guys every day and leading by example, it gave me something to aspire to. And so what, awards or not, I was I knew that I had grown as a person, and I'd become, a better individual. And that meant a lot to me, because that's why I went to college, was to grow as a person and hopefully, play some good golf. And I played some good golf. I wish I would have played more, but it was a cool experience because I felt like I was at least adding something to the program's history. And that was something that the whole time I was there, I wanted to leave. I wanted to do what Scott Verplank and Bob Tway and, all those guys. I mean, I can't name them all, right? Tim Fleming, even all the way back to Mike Holder, right? Or Tom Jones, EJ Pfister. I'm going to keep going. So many guys that when I got to OSU, here was this golf course, and here were all these amenities that weren't because of me, but were because of all of the players who had come before me and had worked hard and who had succeeded. That's why we got to do those things that we did. And so from my perspective, from the moment that I got there, I wanted to do something like that. I wanted, I probably wished it had been even more, but what I was able to be a part of was, a national championship team in 06, which was a really neat thing for all of us. And I think, for the program, and to add an individual award to that as well meant a lot to me, for the program to give back in that way that had given me, and still even to this day gives me so much. So that for me was why it was, I think, fulfilling, because I felt like I owed it back to you guys to do something like that for you and for all the players who were going to come after me.
Well, and you do know that a sentiment of gratitude like that doesn't exist everywhere, right? I mean, that's kind of a special thing, and I'm glad that you feel that way. It's important for most people to know that. And I remember you didn't quite finish your master's, and you were going to have to come back for one more semester. And you came to me that summer, or at some point, maybe it was maybe a little later than that, but you came to me and you asked the question, Coach, I'm just about to finish up this degree. Do you think I ought to turn pro? Or if I do, how do I do that, or whatever? And I answered immediately, no, don't turn pro. And you kind of got a stunned look on your face. And I basically explained to you, Zach, if it's not burning inside you, if you have to ask the question, then you should not turn professional. And so I want to know how that impacted you, because I knew I was taking a chance on really upsetting a young man.
Yeah, but you were honest, which again, I've had some people who were honest with me over the years, and that has been, honesty it goes a long way. You were very honest that day. I mean, I had seen the best players, for 5 years, both on my team and, all the players of the year. I got to play with 2 of the players of the year, in college golf, right? That doesn't happen very often. Pablo, Martin, and Hunter. And so I saw the best players. I saw, I played against the first team All-Americans at every event. I knew that I was a good college player, but I knew that I wasn't as good as they were. And some of those guys were going to have a hard time getting out, on to the tour. And so, I don't know, I always liked school. I always enjoy, being in the classroom and learning. And I was enjoying the MBA program and getting that degree. And so I began to kind of see, what other paths might be available for me in my life. And I felt like the player that I was, I knew that I knew that I could hit the ball straight and I had enough distance, but I always felt like on and around the greens, I just wasn't quite as good as a lot of the other, best players. And so I'd have a lot of rounds where I hit the ball like a 67 and shoot 72. And I've never, played in the pro ranks, but I'm pretty sure there are plenty of guys that say 72s don't get you very far. So I felt like for me, the success that I'd had and the kind of player that I was, it was probably going to be years and years and years of trying to get out onto the tour. And that meant a lot of, the mini tours and just struggling to make it out there. And I knew that I had a chance to get, an MBA, have a master's degree, and have some doors open up for me in finance and in that world, which I'm extremely thankful for even now. And I wanted to pursue those. And so I came to you because I think I had to ask the question, what do I do? How do I do this? And I think you quickly reminded me that if you're not ready to, get in the car tomorrow, with your bag and a few shirts and go chase that dream, you're going to get eaten alive. And I think I agreed with you. And I've never looked back. It's been 14 years. I don't think I've ever really wondered, because I was very honest with myself and that I knew that I was a good player, but I didn't think that I was going to be that good, that fast, that I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Does
Well,
that make sense?
it makes sense.
Can I ask that on a podcast? To the does that make sense?
It makes sense. And it also was a very good decision because you've had a wonderful career in finance. You've got a great, beautiful wife, 2 great boys. You've got a great life going on. And so you and I have kept in touch all through the years. I've loved that. It's one of the great things about coaching is not just the 4 or 5 years you spend together, but then just watching the lives develop. It's just amazing. Yeah. It's one of the great caveats of coaching that if you get to live long enough, you get to keep on seeing that. And so I'm thrilled by the fact that we still have a great relationship. And so I'm at the coaches convention in Las Vegas last December, and I get a call, and I thought, why is Zach Robinson calling me? And you called me to tell me that that you had just been given a cancer diagnosis, and you hadn't told your parents yet, but you were just trying to reach out to a few people to make sense of this, and you were getting ready to call your parents. But I kind of broke down because I thought, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't have any idea, but I did know that I was very humbled that you would call me at that time. So.
Yeah. So in December, I found out that I had thyroid cancer, which I didn't expect to hear or hadn't really shown a lot of symptoms or signs of. So it was a little bit of a news flash for me. And I wanted to make sure that some people knew who were important to me. And I wasn't going to do I don't know, this is just me. I don't know. I didn't do anything on like social media, like to let everybody know. And I thought about it, and I ultimately didn't for whatever reasons, but I did want some people to know. And so I called some people who either meant a lot to me or I thought should know or would want to know. And you were, certainly near the top of that list. And so, of course, you were really inspiring on that phone call, and that meant a lot to me. It wasn't an easy phone. I was making like several of those phone calls in a row. And so I think like I had like, the tear-stained cheeks from kind of going through the same, like, well, then this, and then they told me this, and now that. And so that was a kind of a weird few days that followed a weird few weeks. But I'll just say I have what appears to be a very common and very treatable form of this in younger adults, which, to hear that, it was a blessing. I had surgery in January to remove my thyroid and a whole bunch of lymph nodes in my neck. And then with thyroid cancer, the thyroid is the only organ in the body that absorbs iodine, which is in our food and, things like that. So they do this iodine treatment where they make the iodine radioactive. And so it's going to go find any remaining thyroid cell, in your neck or anywhere else in your body. And it's supposed to go get it and zap it, kill it. So I did the iodine treatment in June. And I did all this at MD Anderson, which has been, they've been awesome. And I have to say, in part, my relationships through OSU, I called on some people who I knew had relationships there or who knew people or had been there themselves and just said, look, this is going on. What do I do? And so in some kind of weird, strange way, my OSU, connections there through the program, I leaned on those to kind of get, a game plan for this because it was a new experience for me. So the treatment is effectively concluded with the iodine treatment that I got in June. And so I kind of enter this monitoring phase for the rest of my life. And so all my doctors are really optimistic and, they say all these very, very positive things. And so that's kind of how I am too. It's been weird though, when you have kids, you start to see things a little bit differently. And so for me, having 2 boys, ages 5 and 2, that was a few weeks for me, and it still is now, but that was a few weeks at first that were very difficult because, if I were a single guy and, something happens to me, who cares, right? But when you've got a wife and a family, it kind of gets your mind in all kinds of places. And so I wanted to talk to you that day. I remember because you're one like the people in, I think everybody has these pillars that they're just these people. I call them pillars. That's the word that I use for it. But the people that you would call if you needed something. And so there's, I'm sure, kind of everybody has a handful of pillars that I'd always call that person or that teacher or that friend. And for me, you are a pillar in my life. And so when I was going through that, trying to get my mind in the right place, trying to think about, the surgery and all, the prognosis and all, like the numbers and everything like that. I knew that I wanted to talk to you because you were going to give me some good thoughts and you were going to help me get my mind in the right place, because you did that for so many years at OSU as I was going through adversity. And as I was entering that phase of adversity, I knew that I wasn't immune to anything like that. None of us are. So I knew that I was experiencing some adversity in my life that was unforeseen. And at that time, it reminded me of so many of the things I experienced on the golf course, in that it was kind of unforeseen. I didn't think that shouldn't have happened. That 6-iron shouldn't have carried, into the, whatever it is, right? That shouldn't have happened. I'm feeling this adversity inside. I was calling some people that I knew were going to be the rocks that I needed to lean on. And you're one of those people. And I don't mind saying that. And I have for a long time. That's who you are in my life. And so that was a pretty weird experience. And it still is. I should probably, I think I should be calling you more, because I'm still trying to get my mind in the right place, as far as the outlook for the rest of my life, which has been a challenge for me, even after the treatment and the prognosis and all the really positive things that you hear. There's still so many thoughts. I'm sure that, some people that are hearing this can understand. There are always some thoughts that you work through in your mind that kind of hit you out of nowhere that you've got to really work through. And that's been one of my challenges, is kind of getting my mind in the right place for the rest of my life after this. And so I might call you after this.
Well, that's great. No, the beautiful part of that is it began in a relationship that we've had for now almost 20 years now, about 20 years, and coaching a player goes way beyond golf. And in this case, it did as well. And a lot of people forget that. They think it's about that grip change we made when you were a freshman. And it really isn't. Yeah. That was a small part of what's going on.
You'll be glad to hear. So my 5-year-old, my oldest, Luke, has taken up, an interest in golf, which is really fun. And so I got him some little, short U.S. kids clubs. I think that's what it was. But I could tell, the grip is very natural. It's this hockey kind of hockey grip. And so I said, wait a minute, I'm going to get this little thing off Amazon where you pop it on the grip, and it's the grip. It's like the mold. Yeah. And so I just want you to know that for a 5-year-old, he is already working on getting that good, solid Ben Hogan-like grip, which I know is what everybody wants a 5-year-old to be thinking about. But I know how important the grip is. Every golfer does. And so I'm making sure that he gets those fundamentals down from the beginning. So if he ever achieves, anything in golf, right, and plays at the next level or whatever, he doesn't spend a year trying to get things whatever. He's going to be good to go.
Well, anyway, you got it shouted out eventually. And I definitely appreciate those comments. And obviously we'll be thinking about you as you continue moving forward in good health. So that's great.
Thanks.
But we've only hit on probably 70% of what I wanted to. We'll probably have to do a round 2 with you at some point. But before we leave, we have to do a speed round. Coach Mikkel, don't we do a speed round with every person?
Yikes. We got to do the speed round. It's one of my favorites. Before we go there, I'd love to sneak in a question too, Zach. So you were talking about your son starting to figure out the U.S. kids clubs and the grip and stuff. On a note for junior golfers, just you have kind of interesting perspective coming through, since you're not on tour now, but you were a great college player. You live a happy life. You have a family. What kind of direct advice would you give to a junior golfer, and B, their parents going through kind of recruitment, junior golf, and they're looking ahead to college golf in the future?
Yeah. So junior golfers, how you play is as important as how you carry yourself on a golf course. I struggled with that a lot, and I know that coaches look at that a lot. I like to think that I got to OSU in spite of some of my emotional outbursts on a golf course, but obviously, you work hard, but really how you carry yourself, how you show, respect for yourself and for others in the game of golf, I think is a really important thing that I wish I had worked harder at. I think that is something that if I were a coach, and I had a good player who acted like, kind of a punk, or I had almost as good of a player who was a great kid and acted well, I would want the kid who acted the best. So I would say just make sure that, as you work on your short games and your 6 irons and everything, just make sure that you understand the game of golf and you respect the golf course and all those around you. For the parents, that's a great question. And it's personal. I would say try and keep the big picture in mind, that not every player will play, top flight college golf. Not every kid is supposed to play, college golf or any kind of college sports. So make sure that it stays fun for them. Make sure that you encourage them. And I would say when it comes to looking at the areas where they can improve, that should be a conversation not of a harsh tone, but of a way to work on something together and find ways to solve that problem as a team. So make that something that is enjoyable for your child as they continue to play the game. Because if the game stops being fun, if it all becomes about the results and the pressure, they're not going to want to play, or they're not going to play as well. So it's got to stay fun. It's got to be enjoyable. And remember that regardless of their final achievements in golf, the game can teach them things that they will use for the rest of their lives in any area that they ultimately pursue.
That's awesome. Perfect. And then when they're around 5 years old, just make sure they have the grip down, and then
just get the grip down and then just let them go. No, make sure it's fun. I mean, that's one thing, like, people always ask me, like, is he going to play? And I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do. And I would say it too, like, if you're like a golfer and you're like having kids, like, let them play all sports, let them have fun. I'm not going to like make my kid do this, or you have to play good too. Cause no, I want him to have fun. And if he tells me, he wants to be a vet or an engineer, things he's already said, I think it's great. And I want him to be a fulfilled human being. And for me, in a lot of ways, that's what golf has done for me, but it's not a universal thing. It's a personal thing. And so for everybody, it's something else out there. And so, but if they are going to play, which I think if they are, that's awesome. And you want to get them started young. That's so great that they're, 4, 5, 6, got to just get them out there hitting the ball. But if you can get them in a good grip from the beginning, I think that's really great too.
Awesome. I think we're ready for the pressure cooker, Coach.
What is the speed round? What is this business? This was never discussed.
Well, it's just kind of people get to know you from a little even more personal level here. Things you're interested in, things you love, things you like, whatever. So you ready?
I think so.
Okay. Ben Hogan or Byron Nelson?
Ben Hogan.
Favorite food, steak or seafood?
Steak.
Okay, I figured that one. George Strait or Luke Bryan? Be careful how you answer this.
The Dave Matthews Band.
Okay. Favorite pro golfer?
Oh man, anybody OSU related?
Okay, you love the OSU Cowboys. All right, Dances with Stars or The Bachelor?
I will turn the TV off.
Thank you. God, that's the best thing you answered today. Caddyshack or Tin Cup?
Tin Cup.
Okay. Tony Romo or Roger Staubach?
This goes back to your Jerry Jones beef, doesn't it?
It does. I'm still mad at Jerry Jones.
I'm going to say Tony Romo.
Oh, gosh. Okay, Dallas Cowboys or Dallas Stars? You got to watch one sporting event. Who's it going to be?
Well, the Stars are in the final, too.
That's the reason I asked the question.
Playoff hockey is pretty exciting. I'm going to go Stars.
Okay. Have you ever lost a foot race to a college golf coach?
Yes.
Yes, you have. I just want people to know. Now, I pulled a groin muscle that took 5 years to heal.
Yeah. What a cheap shot.
Tell him, Zach.
But when you're the host, you can do whatever you want, I guess. Okay.
Okay. World's fastest eater?
Zach Robinson.
That's true. I have to acquiesce to that. And your favorite Coach McGraw quirk?
Oh, man. I wish I would have had a day to prepare. Huh?
There are so many, you know. So just give the favor.
Probably you asking someone to punch you in your abs 10 times a day. Like,
Yes, of
we
course.
get it. You do the crunches, hit my stomach. We get it. You do it one time and that's all you have to do it.
Okay, that was a pretty good quirk. Not doing that so much in my 60s, but it's still there.
Okay. Not
All
so
right,
much.
well, Zach, truly a pleasure to have you on today. You've been an amazing guest, and you gave a lot of good perspectives on life and hard work and, you know, dreams and how to make them come true and just different things. And I think one of the most beautiful parts about that is, in my opinion, you are the consummate student athlete. You were great in the classroom. You were great to your teammates. You were great on the course, and you've done a lot with your life afterwards. So to me, that's what collegiate athletics should be all about.
Well, you're far too kind. Thank you very much. But I can assure everyone who hears this that you are being far too kind, as you always are. I was very excited that you asked me on. I think this is really cool. Your book was awesome. There was so much cool insight in there. And so I was really excited to be on here, even though probably nobody knows who I am. But
they're going to know now, Zach.
They're going to know now that I'm at least the guy that beat you at eating. And honestly, that's probably all I need to know.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Zach. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, guys.